The corporate holiday party was in full swing when I realized my wife was about to destroy our marriage in front of 300 witnesses. Standing there in my rented tuxedo, clutching a lukewarm gin and tonic, I watched Chloe Rivera Lawson work her magic on Derek Keating like a master puppeteer pulling strings. Before we dive deeper into this story, I have one small request. Please subscribe, drop a like, comment, and hit that hype button to boost this channel so more people can discover these incredible Reddit stories. She's really going for it tonight, isn't she? Maya whispered beside me, her voice dripping with the kind of excitement that comes from watching someone else's life implode. Maya had been Chloe's best friend since college, and she possessed the unique talent of stirring up drama while maintaining plausible deniability. I'm Eric Lawson, 33 years old, and I fix software problems for a living. Not exactly the kind of guy who commands attention at corporate galas, especially when my wife looks like she stepped off a magazine cover, and my boss looks like he stepped out of a boardroom power fantasy. Derek Keating was everything I wasn't. 41, wealthy, perfectly groomed, and possessed of that particular brand of confidence that comes from never having to worry about money or consequences. He was also Chloe's direct supervisor at Rivera Marketing Solutions, a detail that made the current scene even more nauseating. The ballroom at the Riverside Grand Hotel was decorated in tasteful silver and gold, with floor-to-ceiling windows overlooking the Penobscot River. The kind of venue that screamed, "We're successful, and we want everyone to know it." Crystal chandeliers cast warm light over the assembled crowd of marketing executives, software developers, and various corporate hangers-on. "Eric, you should probably—" Maya started, but I held up a hand. "I'm watching," I said, my voice steady despite the rage building in my chest. Chloe was wearing a red dress that hugged every curve, her dark hair swept up in an elegant chignon that had probably cost more than my monthly car payment. She was laughing at something Derek had whispered in her ear, her hand resting on his forearm in a gesture that was just intimate enough to make my stomach turn. Derek's wife wasn't here tonight, business trip to Portland, according to the office gossip. How convenient. "Dance with me," Maya said suddenly, grabbing my arm. "It'll look better than you standing here staring like a stalker." She had a point. I set down my drink and followed her onto the dance floor, positioning myself so I had a clear view of Chloe and Derek. Maya was wearing a black cocktail dress that showed off her figure, and under different circumstances, I might have appreciated the way she moved against me. Tonight, though, I had other priorities. I pulled out my phone and started recording. The video quality was excellent, even in the dim lighting. Derek's hand sliding from Chloe's waist to the small of her back. Chloe's fingers tracing the lapel of his jacket, the way they moved together like they'd done this before, many times. "You're recording them," Maya observed, not sounding particularly surprised. "Evidence," I replied, keeping my voice low. "For later." "Later what?" I didn't answer. I was too busy watching my wife of 2 years destroy everything we'd built together. The house in the suburbs, the joint bank accounts, the plans we'd made for kids and vacations and growing old together, all of it crumbling while a string quartet played Vivaldi in the background. The song ended, and I watched Derek lean down to whisper something in Chloe's ear. She laughed, a sound I used to love but now made my skin crawl. Then she said something back that made Derek's eyes widen with what looked like anticipation. They were planning something that involved leaving this party together. "I need another drink," I told Maya, handing her my phone. "Keep recording if they do anything interesting." "Eric, what are you—" But I was already walking away, weaving through the crowd toward the bar. I needed to think, and I needed alcohol to help me do it. The bartender was a young guy with perfectly styled hair and the kind of smile that suggested he'd seen plenty of corporate drama over the years. "Double bourbon. Neat," I said. "Rough night?" he asked, pouring the drink with practiced efficiency. "Getting rougher by the minute." I turned back toward the dance floor and saw that Chloe and Derek, had moved closer to the exit. Derek was checking his phone while Chloe touched up her lipstick using her compact mirror, the universal signs of people preparing to leave together. My phone buzzed. A text from Maya. "They're heading for the elevator." I knocked back the bourbon in one burning gulp and followed. The Riverside Grand had the kind of old-fashioned elevator with brass doors and a uniformed operator. I watched from behind a potted palm as Chloe and Derek stepped inside, Derek's hand resting possessively on Chloe's lower back. The operator asked for a floor number, and I heard Derek say, "Penthouse level." Of course. Derek would have booked the penthouse suite. I waited 30 seconds, then approached the elevator. The operator was an elderly man with kind eyes and the patience that comes from years of discretion. "Penthouse level, please," I said. "Are you a guest of Mr. Keating's?" Something like that. The elevator rose smoothly, and I tried to calm the rage that was threatening to consume me. I'd always been the analytical type, the guy who thought through problems and found logical solutions. But this wasn't a software bug I could fix with a few lines of code. This was my life, and it was falling apart in real time. The penthouse hallway was carpeted in thick burgundy pile, with elegant sconces casting warm light on cream-colored walls. I could hear voices coming from behind the door at the end of the hall. Chloe's laugh, followed by Derek's deeper chuckle. I pulled out my phone and started recording again, moving closer to the door. The audio wasn't perfect, but it was clear enough to make out what they were saying. "Been waiting all week for this." Derek's voice. Me too. Eric thinks I'm at the hotel bar with Maya. Poor Eric, he has no idea what he's missing. He's sweet, but he's so predictable, you know? Same job, same routine, same everything. A girl needs excitement. And I provide excitement? You provide a lot of things Eric can't. I heard the sound of a door closing, followed by Chloe's distinctive giggle. Then silence. I stood there in that hallway for a full minute, phone in hand, trying to process what I'd just heard. 2 years of marriage. 2 years of thinking we were building something together. 2 years of being the predictable husband, while my wife sought excitement with her boss. The elevator dinged behind me, and I turned to see Maya stepping out, looking flushed and slightly out of breath. "There you are," she said. "I've been looking everywhere for you." "Just getting some air," I lied. "Right, air." She glanced at the closed door at the end of the hall. "So you know." "I know." "How long have you known?" "About 5 minutes." "How long have you known?" Maya had the grace to look embarrassed. "A few weeks. Maybe a month." "And you didn't think to tell me?" "It's not my place to get involved in other people's marriages." "But it's your place to encourage it?" She didn't answer, which was answer enough. We rode the elevator down in silence, and I spent the time thinking about everything that had led to this moment. The late nights Chloe claimed to be working, the new clothes and jewelry that appeared without explanation, the way she'd grown distant and distracted over the past few months. All the signs had been there. I'd just been too trusting, too predictable to see them. The party was still in full swing when we returned to the ballroom. I found Sam Rodriguez near the dessert table, loading up a plate with chocolate-covered strawberries. Sam was my closest friend at work, a fellow software developer with a weakness for expensive gadgets and elaborate practical jokes. "There you are," he said around a mouthful of strawberry. "Maya said you disappeared. Where's Chloe?" "Networking," I said. Sam gave me a look. He'd known me long enough to recognize when something was wrong, but he was also smart enough not to push. Instead, he offered me a strawberry. "These are incredible. Want one?" "I want to go home. It's only 10:30. I know what time it is." Sam studied my face for a moment, then set down his plate. "What happened?" I glanced around the ballroom, taking in the scene. The successful executives in their expensive suits, the marketing professionals in their designer dresses, The software developers like me, trying to fit in, but always slightly out of place. "I'll tell you tomorrow," I said. "Right now, I just want to leave." "What about Chloe?" "Chloe can find her own way home." I didn't sleep that night. Instead, I sat in my home office, a converted bedroom in our colonial-style house on Maple Street, and went through Chloe's phone. She'd left it charging on her nightstand, probably because she was too drunk and satisfied to remember to take it with her when she finally came home at 3 in the morning. The security was laughably easy to bypass. After all, I was the one who'd set up most of her digital life. Cloud backups, social media accounts, even her work email. The benefits of being married to someone in IT. What I found made my stomach turn. Text messages going back 3 months. Photos that definitely weren't meant for me. Calendar entries for client meetings that I now realized were hotel room reservations. A whole secret life that existed parallel to our marriage. The most recent exchange was from earlier that evening. "Derek, tonight was incredible. When can I see you again?" "Chloe, soon. Eric's going to that tech conference in Boston next weekend. We'll have the whole weekend." "Derek, I'll book the usual place." "Chloe, can't wait. Last night was just the beginning. I screenshot everything and uploaded it to a secure cloud drive that Chloe didn't know about. Then I carefully placed her phone back exactly where I'd found it and went downstairs to make coffee." The kitchen was Chloe's pride and joy, with granite countertops and stainless steel appliances that had cost more than my car. She'd insisted on the renovation last year, claiming we needed to invest in our future. Now I wondered if she'd been planning her exit strategy even then. I was on my second cup when I heard her stirring upstairs. The shower turned on, and I imagined her washing off the evidence of her night with Derek. The thought made me want to put my fist through the wall, but I forced myself to stay calm. I had work to do. My phone rang. Sam. "Morning, sunshine. You left pretty abruptly last night. Everything okay?" "Can you meet me for breakfast? Mel's Diner on Oak Street." "Sure, but I'll explain when I see you." Mel's Diner was the kind of place that served coffee in thick ceramic mugs and didn't judge you for ordering pancakes at any hour of the day. Sam was already there when I arrived, sitting in a corner booth with a newspaper spread out in front of him. "You look like hell," he said, as I slid into the seat across from him. "I feel worse." I told him everything. The party, the elevator, the phone records. Sam listened without interrupting, his expression growing more serious with each detail. "Jesus, Eric. I'm sorry. I don't want sympathy. I want help." "What kind of help?" I leaned forward, lowering my voice. "The kind that requires your particular skill set." Sam had a talent for what he called digital archaeology. He could find information that most people thought was private, track down deleted files, and generally make technology do things it wasn't supposed to do. It was a hobby that had gotten him in trouble a few times, but it had also made him invaluable to our IT department. "What are you thinking?" he asked. "I'm thinking Derek Keating needs to learn that actions have consequences." "And Chloe?" "Chloe made her choice. Now she gets to live with the results." Sam was quiet for a moment, stirring his coffee thoughtfully. "This could get complicated. You're talking about ruining people's lives." "They ruined mine first. That's not how the law sees it. I'm not planning to break any laws. I'm just planning to make sure the truth comes out." The waitress came by to refill our cups, and we sat in silence until she was out of earshot. Finally, Sam nodded. "What do you need?" "Derek drives a black BMW. License plate number is in my phone. I need to know where he goes, when he goes there, and who he's with." "GPS tracker?" "Can you get one?" "I can get anything. The question is whether you're sure you want to go down this road." I thought about Chloe's laugh as she told Derek how predictable I was, about the plans they were making for next weekend, about the 2 years of marriage that had apparently meant nothing to her. "I'm sure." Sam sighed. "Okay, but we do this smart. No unnecessary risks, no evidence trails, and we stop if things get too hot. Agreed. We shook hands across the table, and I felt something shift inside me. For the first time since last night, I wasn't just angry. I was focused. I spent the rest of the morning at the office going through the motions of debugging code and attending meetings while my mind worked on a different kind of problem. Derek's schedule, Chloe's routine, the best ways to gather information without being detected. At lunch, I drove to Maya's apartment complex on the other side of town. She lived in one of those modern developments with names like Riverside Commons and amenities like a fitness center and a pool that nobody ever used. I found her at the coffee shop in the complex's main building, sitting at a small table with her laptop open and her phone within easy reach. Maya worked as a freelance graphic designer, which meant she could work from anywhere and usually chose the places with the best gossip potential. "Eric," she said, looking surprised to see me. "What are you doing here?" "We need to talk." I sat down across from her without being invited. Maya closed her laptop and gave me her full attention, which was more than she'd done at the party last night. "About what?" "About how long you've been covering for Chloe." Maya's face went through several expressions in rapid succession: surprise, guilt, defensiveness, and finally, resignation. "I told you last night. It's not my place to get involved." "But you are involved. You've been helping her lie to me. I've been supporting my friend through a difficult time. By encouraging her to cheat on her husband?" Maya looked around the coffee shop, checking to see if anyone was listening. The place was mostly empty except for a few college students with textbooks spread out on their tables. "It's not that simple," she said finally. "Then explain it to me." "Chloe's been unhappy for months. She feels trapped, like she's living someone else's life. So she decided to start living Derek's life instead? She needed excitement, adventure. You have to understand, Eric. You're a great guy, but you're predictable, I heard." Maya winced. She didn't mean it like that. How did she mean it? She meant that you're stable, reliable, the kind of man who makes a good husband and father. But not the kind of man who makes her happy. Not anymore. I sat back in my chair, processing this information. Part of me had hoped that Maya would tell me it was all a mistake, that Chloe was planning to end things with Derek and recommit to our marriage, but the look in Maya's eyes told me that wasn't going to happen. "How long?" I asked. "How long what?" "How long has she been planning to leave me?" Maya hesitated, then seemed to make a decision. "She hasn't said anything about leaving. She likes having both. The security of being married to you and the excitement of being with Derek. She wants to have her cake and eat it too. That's one way to put it." I leaned forward, fixing Maya with a stare that made her shift uncomfortably in her seat. "Here's what's going to happen. You're going to tell me everything you know about Chloe and Derek. When they meet, where they go, what they've been planning, and then you're going to help me make sure the truth comes out. I can't do that. You can, and you will, because if you don't, I'll make sure everyone knows that you've been facilitating this affair from the beginning. Your friends, your clients, your family. Everyone will know that Maya Chen is the kind of person who helps married women cheat on their husbands." Maya's face went pale. "You're threatening me. I'm offering you a choice. Help me, or deal with the consequences of your actions." She stared at me for a long moment, and I could see her weighing her options. Finally, she nodded. "What do you want to know?" "Everything." Maya told me everything over the course of 2 hours and 3 cups of coffee. The affair had started 4 months ago at a company retreat in Bar Harbor. Derek had made his move during the closing night party, and Chloe had been receptive. What began as a one-night stand had evolved into a full-blown relationship, complete with regular hotel meetings and elaborate lies. She's been using her work credit card to pay for some of the hotel rooms, Maya admitted. Derek reimburses her in cash, but it still shows up on the company records. That's embezzlement, I said. It's a gray area. Derek's her boss, and he approves all her expenses. Not if he's using company funds to pay for personal hotel rooms. Maya looked uncomfortable. You're going to get them both fired. That's the idea. I left Maya's apartment with a notebook full of information and a clear plan of action. Step 1 was already in motion. Sam had texted me earlier to confirm that the GPS tracker was in place on Derek's BMW. Step 2 required a trip to the office. Rivera Marketing Solutions occupied 3 floors of a modern glass building downtown, with an open floor plan that was supposed to encourage collaboration, but mostly just made it impossible to have a private conversation. Chloe's desk was on the 2nd floor, in a cluster with the other marketing executives. I found her there at 4 o'clock, working on what looked like a presentation for a new client. She was wearing a blue dress that I'd never seen before, and her hair was styled differently than usual. The changes were subtle, but they were there. The signs of a woman who was dressing to impress someone other than her husband. "Eric," she said, looking surprised. "What are you doing here?" "I brought you coffee." I held up a cup from the coffee shop downstairs. "Thought you might need the caffeine after your late night." "You're sweet, but I'm fine. Maya and I didn't stay out that late." The lie came so easily that I almost believed it myself. If I hadn't seen her with Derek, hadn't heard their conversation, hadn't read their text messages, I might have accepted her explanation without question. "How was the party after I left?" "Oh, you know, the usual corporate stuff. Boring speeches, awkward small talk. I was glad when Maya suggested we head to the hotel bar." Another lie, delivered with the same casual confidence as the first. "Did you see much of Derek after I left?" Something flickered in Chloe's eyes, but her expression remained neutral. "Not really. He was networking with some clients from Portland." Right, the Portland clients. I set the coffee on her desk and kissed her forehead, playing the role of the devoted husband. She smiled and squeezed my hand, playing the role of the faithful wife. "I'll see you at home," I said. "I might be a little late. We're working on a big presentation for tomorrow." "Of course you are." I left the office and drove to Murphy's Tavern, a dive bar on the outskirts of town that catered to blue-collar workers and people who wanted to drink without being judged. The kind of place where everyone minded their own business, and the bartender knew when to cut people off. I ordered a beer and called Detective Jim Royce. Jim was my neighbor, a 20-year veteran of the local police force who lived 2 houses down from me on Maple Street. We'd become friends over the past year, bonding over weekend barbecues and our shared frustration with the city's snow removal policies. "Eric," he answered on the 2nd ring. "What's up?" "I need some advice, hypothetically speaking." Hypothetical advice, my favorite kind. What's the hypothetical situation? Let's say someone discovers that their spouse is having an affair with their boss. And let's say this boss has been using company resources to fund the affair. What would be the best way to handle that situation? Jim was quiet for a moment. Hypothetically speaking, the person should document everything, consult with a divorce attorney, and let the proper authorities handle any potential financial crimes. And if this person wanted to handle things themselves, then this person would be making a mistake that could land them in jail. Even if they didn't break any laws? Especially then, because the line between legal revenge and illegal harassment is thinner than most people think. I thanked Jim and hung up, then sat at the bar nursing my beer and thinking about what he'd said. He was right, of course. The smart thing to do would be to hire a lawyer and let the system handle things. But the system was slow, and it was uncertain, and it didn't account for the rage that was eating me alive. My phone buzzed. A text from Sam. "Package delivered. Tracking is live." I opened the app Sam had installed on my phone and saw a red dot moving slowly through downtown. Derek's BMW was on the move, heading toward the interstate. I watched for a few minutes, then saw the dot stop at a location I recognized. The Pineview Motel. The same place Maya had mentioned as one of Derek and Chloe's regular meeting spots. I finished my beer and drove across town, parking in the lot of a fast food restaurant with a clear view of the motel. Derek's BMW was parked outside room 237, and I could see lights on behind the curtained windows. 20 minutes later, Chloe's Honda Civic pulled into the lot. I watched her walk to room 237, knock twice, and disappear inside. Then I sat in my car for 2 hours, documenting everything with my phone's camera. Timestamps, license plates, even a few photos of the building itself. By the time they emerged, I had enough evidence to end both their careers and destroy their reputations. But I was just getting started. The next morning, I called in sick to work and spent the day implementing phase 2 of my plan. Using the information Maya had given me, I created a detailed timeline of Derek and Chloe's relationship, complete with dates, locations, and financial records. Then I made some phone calls. The first was to Derek's wife, Patricia. I'd met her a few times at company functions, and she seemed like a decent person who deserved to know what her husband was doing behind her back. Mrs. Keating, this is Eric Lawson. I work with your husband at Rivera Marketing. Oh, hello, Eric. How are you? I'm fine, thank you. I was wondering if you might have a few minutes to meet for coffee. There's something I need to discuss with you. About Derek? Yes, ma'am. There was a long pause. Is he in some kind of trouble? I think that's something we should discuss in person. We arranged to meet that afternoon at a small cafe near her office. Patricia Keating was a successful real estate agent in her early 40s, with the kind of polished appearance that came from years of dealing with high-end clients. She was also, I realized as soon as I saw her, someone who already suspected what I was about to tell her. He's having an affair, she said before I could even sit down. Yes. With someone from work. Yes. How long have you known? A few days. How long have you suspected? Patricia stirred her coffee thoughtfully. Months, maybe longer. The late nights, the business trips that didn't make sense, the way he's been acting around the house. I kept hoping I was wrong. I pulled out my phone and showed her some of the photos I'd taken. Patricia studied them with the detached professionalism of someone who'd learned to compartmentalize her emotions. Who is she? She asked. My wife. Patricia looked up sharply, meeting my eyes for the first time since I'd sat down. Oh God, I'm so sorry. So am I. What do you want to do about it? I want them both to face the consequences of their actions. Patricia nodded slowly. What did you have in mind? I spent the next hour outlining my plan. Patricia listened without interrupting, occasionally asking questions or suggesting modifications. By the time we parted ways, we had an agreement. The second phone call was to Rivera Marketing's HR department. I spoke with Jennifer Walsh, the HR director, and requested a confidential meeting to discuss some concerns about financial irregularities in the marketing department. What kind of irregularities? She asked. The kind that involve company credit cards being used for personal expenses. Can you be more specific? I'd rather discuss the details in person, but I have documentation that I think you'll find very interesting. We scheduled a meeting for the following Monday. That gave me the weekend to gather additional evidence and prepare my presentation. The third phone call was to the local newspaper. I spoke with Tom Bradley, a reporter who covered business news and had a reputation for aggressive investigative journalism. I have a story that might interest you, I said. Corporate executive using company funds to finance an extramarital affair. How big a company? Big enough to matter, and the executive is married to a city councilwoman. That got his attention. Patricia Keating had been elected to the city council 2 years ago on a platform of fiscal responsibility and family values. The irony was too delicious to ignore. What kind of documentation do you have? Photos, financial records, witness statements, everything you'd need to verify the story. And you're willing to go on the record? Under certain circumstances. We arranged to meet on Tuesday, after I'd had my conversation with HR. By Friday afternoon, all the pieces were in place. Derek and Chloe had no idea what was coming, but their world was about to implode in spectacular fashion. I spent Friday evening at home, pretending to work on my laptop while Chloe got ready for another client dinner. She was wearing a new dress, another purchase that I was sure Derek had paid for in one way or another. "Don't wait up," she said, kissing me on the cheek. "This might run late." "It always does," I replied. She paused at the door, looking back at me with an expression I couldn't quite read. "Eric, are we okay? You've seemed distant lately." "I'm fine. Just tired." "Maybe we should plan a vacation, get away from work for a while." "Maybe we should." But we both knew there wasn't going to be a vacation. There wasn't going to be anything except the reckoning that was coming. After Chloe left, I opened my laptop and reviewed my files one more time. Photos, financial records, text messages, witness statements. Everything was documented, verified, and ready to deploy. I thought about calling Jim Royce, asking for his advice one more time, but I knew what he would say, and I'd already made my decision. Some things were worth the risk. Monday morning arrived with the kind of crisp autumn air that made Maine famous. I dressed carefully for my meeting with HR, choosing a conservative suit and tie that would help me project the image of a concerned employee rather than a vengeful husband. Rivera Marketing's HR department occupied a corner of the third floor, with Jennifer Walsh's office overlooking the downtown business district. Jennifer was a woman in her 50s with gray hair and the kind of no-nonsense demeanor that came from years of dealing with workplace drama. "Mr. Lawson," she said, gesturing for me to sit down. "Thank you for coming in. You mentioned some concerns about financial irregularities." I opened my briefcase and pulled out a folder containing copies of all the evidence I'd gathered. "I have reason to believe that Derek Keating has been using company resources for personal purposes." Jennifer's expression remained neutral as she reviewed the documents. Credit card statements showing hotel charges that didn't correspond to any legitimate business meetings, receipts for expensive dinners, and gifts that had been coded as client entertainment. A pattern of financial misconduct that went back months. "This is very concerning," she said finally. "How did you come by this information?" "Some of it came to my attention through my work in IT. The rest I discovered through my own investigation." "Your own investigation?" "Derek is having an affair with my wife. She's been using her company credit card to help pay for their hotel rooms." Jennifer set down the papers and looked at me directly. "Mr. Lawson, I need to ask you this directly. Are you bringing these concerns to HR as an employee who discovered financial misconduct, or as a husband seeking revenge against his wife's lover?" "Both," I said. "But that doesn't make the evidence any less valid." "No, it doesn't. But it does complicate the situation considerably." Jennifer spent the next hour going through the documents in detail, asking questions and taking notes. By the time we finished, she had enough information to launch a full investigation. "What happens now?" I asked. "Now I do my job. I'll need to interview Derek and Chloe separately, and I'll need to bring in our forensic accountant to review all the financial records. This could take several weeks." "And in the meantime?" "In the meantime, you go back to work and pretend this conversation never happened. If word gets out that you're the source of these allegations, it could compromise the entire investigation." I agreed to her terms and left the HR office feeling like I'd lit the first fuse on a bomb that would soon explode. But I wasn't done yet. That afternoon, I drove to the Pineview Motel and had a conversation with the desk clerk, a college-aged kid named Tommy who looked like he'd rather be anywhere else. "I'm a private investigator," I lied, showing him a fake ID that Sam had helped me create. "I'm working on a case involving insurance fraud, and I need some information about guests who've been staying here regularly." Tommy looked nervous. I'm not supposed to give out guest information. I slid a $100 bill across the counter. I'm not asking for anything that would get you in trouble. Just confirmation that certain people have been staying here on certain dates. Tommy palmed the money and nodded. What do you need to know? I showed him photos of Derek and Chloe. Have you seen these people before? Yeah, they've been coming here for months. Always get room 237, always pay cash, always leave together. How often? Once or twice a week, sometimes more. Any particular days? Usually Wednesdays and Fridays, sometimes weekends if the guy's wife is out of town. I thanked Tommy and drove home, adding this information to my growing file. The pattern was clear, the evidence was overwhelming, and the trap was almost ready to spring. Tuesday morning brought my meeting with Tom Bradley from the newspaper. We met at a small restaurant outside of town, the kind of place where nobody would recognize us or care what we were talking about. Tom was a thin man in his 40s, with the intense eyes of someone who'd spent years digging up stories that powerful people wanted to keep buried. He listened to my presentation without interrupting, occasionally asking for clarification or additional details. This is good, he said finally. Very good, but I need to verify everything independently before I can run the story. How long will that take? A week, maybe 2. I'll need to interview sources, review financial records, maybe stake out the motel myself. What about Derek's wife being on the city council? That's what makes this a story instead of just gossip. Public officials are held to a higher standard, even when it's their spouse who's misbehaving. Tom promised to keep my identity confidential until the story ran, at which point I would be identified as the source who brought the affair to light. It wasn't ideal, but it was necessary. Wednesday arrived, and with it, the first sign that my plan was working. Chloe came home from work looking stressed and distracted, barely speaking during dinner. Everything okay? I asked, playing the concerned husband. Just work stuff. Jennifer Walsh wants to meet with me tomorrow about some expense report issues. Expense report issues? Probably just routine. You know how HR is about documentation. But I could see the worry in her eyes. She knew that her creative accounting was about to be exposed, and she was trying to figure out how to minimize the damage. That night, she spent hours on her laptop, presumably reviewing her expense reports and trying to construct a plausible explanation for the hotel charges. I pretended to be asleep while she worked, but I was actually watching her through half-closed eyes, fascinated by the sight of someone desperately trying to cover their tracks. Thursday brought the first explosion. Chloe's meeting with HR lasted 3 hours, and she came home looking like she'd been hit by a truck. I'm in trouble, she said, collapsing onto the couch next to me. What kind of trouble? The company thinks I've been misusing my credit card. They're saying I charged personal expenses to business accounts. Have you? The question hung in the air between us. This was Chloe's chance to tell me the truth, to confess everything and ask for forgiveness. Instead, she doubled down on the lies. Of course not. This is all a misunderstanding. Someone must have made a mistake in the accounting department. I'm sure it will work out. I hope so. They've suspended me pending a full investigation. Suspended? With pay for now. But if they decide I've done something wrong... She didn't finish the sentence, but she didn't need to. We both knew that financial misconduct was grounds for immediate termination and possible criminal charges. Friday brought the second explosion. Derek was also suspended, and according to the office gossip that Sam fed me, he was even more panicked than Chloe. He'd hired a lawyer and was threatening to sue the company for wrongful suspension. He's claiming the whole thing is a setup, Sam told me over lunch. Says someone has a personal vendetta against him. Imagine that. You wouldn't know anything about this, would you? I'm just an innocent bystander. Sam gave me a look that suggested he wasn't buying my act, but he didn't push the issue. We'd been friends long enough for him to know when I didn't want to talk about something. That evening, Chloe got a phone call that changed everything. I was in the kitchen making dinner when I heard her gasp from the living room. "What do you mean? It's going to be in the newspaper," she said into the phone. I moved closer to the doorway so I could hear better. "Maya, this is a disaster. If this story runs, I'm finished. We're both finished." A pause. "I don't care what Derek says. We need to do damage control now, before this gets any worse." Another pause. "No, I can't tell Eric. Not yet. I need to figure out how to handle this first." I retreated to the kitchen and continued cooking, but my mind was racing. The newspaper story was moving faster than I'd expected, which meant the final phase of my plan needed to accelerate as well. That night, after Chloe had gone to bed, I made a series of phone calls. The first was to Patricia Keating. "It's time," I said when she answered. "Are you sure? The newspaper story is going to break soon. If we're going to move, it has to be now." "What do you need me to do?" "File for divorce tomorrow. Make sure your lawyer mentions the affair and the financial misconduct. I'll do the same. And then? Then we let the lawyers handle the rest." The second call was to Tom Bradley. "How close are you to running the story?" I asked. "I could have it ready by Monday if you can get me one more piece of evidence." "What do you need?" "Photos of them together at the motel. Something that clearly shows both of their faces." "I can get that." "How?" "Leave that to me." The third call was to Sam. "I need a favor," I said. "A big one." "What kind of favor?" "The kind that requires your camera equipment and your complete discretion." "Eric, what are you planning?" "I'm planning to end this once and for all." Saturday morning dawned gray and overcast, with the kind of persistent drizzle that made everything look depressing. Perfect weather for what I had planned. Sam arrived at my house at 9 o'clock sharp, carrying a duffel bag full of camera equipment that would make a professional photographer jealous. Telephoto lenses, digital cameras, recording devices, and various other gadgets that I didn't recognize but trusted him to operate. "You sure about this?" he asked as we loaded the equipment into my car. "I'm sure. Because once we do this, there's no going back. You understand that, right?" There was no going back the moment I saw them together at that party. We drove to the Pineview Motel and set up surveillance in the parking lot of an abandoned gas station across the street. Sam positioned his cameras while I monitored the GPS tracker on Derek's phone, which showed him at home with his wife. "How do you know they'll show up?" Sam asked. "Because it's Saturday afternoon, and Derek told his wife he was going to play golf. Chloe told me she was going shopping with Maya." "And you know this how?" "Because I've been tracking their patterns for weeks. They're creatures of habit." At 2:15, Derek's BMW pulled into the motel parking lot. He went into the office, presumably to get a room key, then drove to his usual spot outside room 237. At 2:30, Chloe's Honda arrived. "There's your money shot," I told Sam. Sam's camera clicked rapidly as Chloe got out of her car and walked to room 237. The telephoto lens captured everything in perfect detail. Her face, Derek's face as he opened the door, the embrace they shared before disappearing inside. "Got it," Sam said. "Clear shots of both of them, time-stamped and everything." "Good. Now we wait." We waited for 2 hours, documenting their entire visit. When they finally emerged, Sam got more photos of them saying goodbye, kissing in the parking lot, and driving away in separate cars. "That should be enough for the newspaper," I said. "What about for you?" "What do you mean?" "I mean, are you satisfied? Is this enough revenge, or are you planning something else?" I thought about the question as we packed up the equipment. Was I satisfied? Had I achieved what I set out to do? The answer was no. Not yet. Sunday brought the final pieces of the puzzle. Patricia Keating called to tell me she'd filed for divorce and that her lawyer was already preparing to freeze Derek's assets. "How did he react?" I asked. "He doesn't know yet. The papers will be served tomorrow morning at his office." "Assuming he still has an office." "Right. This could get very messy very quickly." Tom Bradley called an hour later to confirm that he had everything he needed for the story. "It'll run in Wednesday's edition," he said. "Front page, above the fold. City councilwoman's husband accused of affair and financial misconduct." What about my wife? She'll be named as the other party, but the focus will be on Derek since he's the public figure. That's fine. Are you prepared for the fallout? This is going to destroy both of their careers. That's the point. Monday morning arrived like a freight train. I went to work as usual, but the atmosphere at Rivera Marketing was electric with tension and gossip. Derek and Chloe were both still suspended, but word had leaked about the investigation. "Did you hear?" Sam whispered to me in the break room. "They brought in forensic accountants over the weekend. Found evidence of systematic financial fraud going back 6 months. How much money are we talking about? Rumors say somewhere around $50,000. Hotel rooms, expensive dinners, jewelry, even a weekend trip to Boston that was charged to the company. $50,000? That's felony territory. If they can prove intent to defraud, Derek and Chloe could be looking at serious jail time." I felt a moment of doubt. Jail time hadn't been part of my original plan. I'd wanted to destroy their reputations and end their careers, but I hadn't necessarily wanted to send them to prison. Then I remembered the sound of Chloe's laugh as she called me predictable, and the doubt disappeared. At noon, Jennifer Walsh called me into her office. "Mr. Lawson, I wanted to update you on the investigation you brought to our attention." "What did you find?" "Substantial evidence of financial misconduct by both Derek Keating and your wife. We're terminating both of them immediately and referring the matter to the district attorney's office for potential criminal prosecution." Criminal prosecution? The amount of money involved crosses the threshold for felony fraud. If convicted, they could face significant fines and imprisonment. Jennifer studied my face carefully. "I hope you understand the seriousness of what you've set in motion. This isn't just about workplace discipline anymore." "I understand." "Do you? Because once the criminal justice system gets involved, you won't be able to control what happens next." "I never expected to control it. I just expected justice to be served." That afternoon, I drove home to find Chloe sitting at the kitchen table with a box of tissues and a termination letter from Rivera Marketing. She looked up when I walked in, and I saw something in her eyes that I'd never seen before. Fear. "They fired me," she said. "I heard." "Eric, I need to tell you something about Derek and me." "I already know." "You know?" "I've known for weeks." Chloe stared at me in shock. "How long?" "Since the Christmas party. I saw you together, heard you talking about me, watched you leave with him." "Why didn't you say anything?" "Because I wanted to see how far you'd go, how many lies you'd tell, how much you'd steal, how completely you'd betray everything we built together." "Eric, I'm sorry. I know how this looks, but nothing. You made your choices, Chloe. Now you get to live with the consequences." "What consequences?" I pulled out my phone and showed her the photos Sam had taken at the motel. Her face went white. "These are going to be in Wednesday's newspaper," I said. "Front page story about Derek's affair and the financial fraud. Your name, your face, everything." "You can't do this." "I already did it." Chloe started crying then, the kind of desperate sobs that come from someone whose world is collapsing around them. Part of me wanted to comfort her, to tell her everything would be okay. But that part was small and getting smaller by the minute. "Please, Eric, I'll do anything. I'll quit my job, we can move away, start over somewhere else." "You don't have a job to quit, and there's no starting over from this." "What do you want from me?" "I want you to pack your things and get out of my house." "Our house. My house. I bought it before we were married, remember? You have no legal claim to it." "Where am I supposed to go?" "That's not my problem anymore." Chloe cried harder, but she didn't argue. She knew she had no leverage left, no cards to play. Everything she'd built her life around, her job, her marriage, her reputation, was gone. I watched her pack her things with the detached interest of someone observing a natural disaster. 2 suitcases and a few boxes, the sum total of her life in our house. It seemed like such a small amount for 2 years of marriage. "Eric," she said, as she loaded the last box into her car. "I really am sorry. I never meant for it to happen like this." "Yes, you did. You meant for it to happen exactly like this. You just didn't mean to get caught." She drove away without another word, and I stood in my driveway watching her taillights disappear into the evening darkness. Then I went inside and opened a bottle of bourbon. Wednesday's newspaper hit the stands at 6 in the morning, and by 7, my phone was ringing nonstop. Reporters, friends, co-workers, even people I hadn't talked to in years. Everyone wanted to know about the scandal that was dominating the local news. The headline was, "Everything Tom Bradley had promised." City councilwoman's husband accused of affair and financial misconduct. Below, it was a large photo of Derek and Chloe embracing outside the Pineview Motel, their faces clearly visible and their guilt undeniable. The story was thorough and devastating. It detailed the affair, the financial fraud, the company investigation, and the pending criminal charges. It named names, provided dates, and included quotes from sources close to the investigation that painted a picture of systematic deception and betrayal. By noon, the story had been picked up by the Portland Press-Herald and the Bangor Daily News. By evening, it was trending on social media with hashtags like True Main Scandal and True Corporate Affair. Derek's political career was over before it had really begun. Patricia Keating issued a statement through her lawyer announcing their divorce and her intention to remain on the city council despite her husband's actions. It was a masterful piece of political damage control that positioned her as the wronged party rather than the politician's wife. Chloe had no such luxury. She had no political position to protect, no public reputation to salvage. She was simply the other woman in a tawdry affair that had cost her everything. Thursday brought the criminal charges. Derek and Chloe were both arrested on felony fraud charges and released on bail pending trial. The local news covered their perp walks with the kind of breathless excitement usually reserved for celebrity scandals. I watched the coverage from my living room, bourbon in hand, feeling a satisfaction that was deeper and more complete than anything I'd experienced in months. This was justice, pure and simple. Not the sanitized version dispensed by divorce courts and civil lawsers, but the raw, unforgiving kind that comes from having your sins exposed to the world. Friday afternoon, Maya called. "Eric, we need to talk." "Do we?" "Chloe is staying with me and she's not doing well." "That's not my problem. She's talking about harming herself." The words hit me like a physical blow, whatever else I felt about Chloe. "What do you want me to do about it?" "Talk to her. Tell her you forgive her. Give her some hope that she can get through this." "I don't forgive her." "Then lie." "No. Eric, please. I know you're angry, and you have every right to be, but she's a human being, and she's suffering. She should have thought about that before she decided to cheat on her husband and steal from her employer." "You're really going to let her destroy herself?" "I'm not letting her do anything. She destroyed herself." Maya hung up without saying goodbye, and I sat in my empty house wondering if I'd gone too far. But the doubt passed quickly. Chloe had made her choices, and I'd made mine. If she couldn't live with the consequences, that was her decision to make. Saturday brought an unexpected visitor. Derek Keating stood on my front porch at 8 in the morning, looking like he hadn't slept in days. His usually perfect hair was disheveled, his expensive suit was wrinkled, and his eyes had the wild look of someone who'd lost everything and was desperate to get it back. "We need to talk," he said. "No, we don't." I started to close the door, but Derek put his hand against it, stopping me. "Please, just 5 minutes." Against my better judgment, I let him in. He stood in my living room looking around at the house he'd helped destroy. and I could see him calculating what it had cost me to bring him down. "You did this," he said. It wasn't a question. "You did this. I just made sure everyone found out about it. Do you have any idea what you've done? My marriage is over. My career is finished. I'm facing criminal charges that could send me to prison." "Good. Good? You think destroying people's lives is good? I think people should face the consequences of their actions." Derek laughed, but there was no humor in it. "Consequences. Right. And what about your consequences, Eric? What about what this is costing you? What's it costing me? Your wife, for one thing. Your marriage. Your reputation as a decent guy who doesn't destroy people for revenge. My wife destroyed our marriage when she decided to sleep with you. My reputation is fine. I'm the wronged party here, remember? Are you? Or are you the guy who was so obsessed with revenge that he orchestrated an elaborate scheme to destroy two people's lives?" I exposed the truth. That's not the same thing as destroying lives. Isn't it? Derek moved closer, and I could smell the alcohol on his breath. He'd been drinking, probably all night. "You want to know what the truth is, Eric? The truth is that Chloe never loved you. She married you because you were safe, because you could provide for her, because you were the kind of guy who wouldn't ask too many questions or demand too much attention. Get out of my house." She told me all about it. How boring you were, how predictable, how she felt like she was suffocating in this perfect little suburban life you'd built for her. Get out. She was going to leave you anyway, Eric. The affair was just her way of working up the courage to do it. All you've accomplished is making sure she'll never have the chance to start over. I grabbed Derek by the shirt and pushed him toward the door. He was bigger than me, but he was also drunk and off balance, and I had the advantage of sobriety and rage. "If you ever come to my house again," I said, "I'll call the police and have you arrested for harassment." "You think you've won," Derek said as I shoved him onto the porch. "But you haven't won anything. You've just destroyed everything, including yourself." I slammed the door and stood there breathing heavily, my heart pounding with adrenaline and fury. Derek was wrong. I had won. I'd exposed their lies, ended their affair, and made sure they both paid for what they'd done to me. But as I stood alone in my empty house, surrounded by the silence that had become my constant companion, I wondered if winning was supposed to feel this hollow. The call came at 3 a.m. on Sunday, jarring me out of a restless sleep. The caller ID showed Maya's number. "Eric, you need to get to the hospital now." "What happened?" "Chloe tried to eliminate herself. She took a bottle of pills and... Just get here, please." I hung up and stared at the ceiling for a long moment, trying to process what Maya had told me. Chloe had attempted self-harm. The woman I'd loved, married, and ultimately destroyed had tried to end her life rather than face the consequences of her actions. I should have felt guilty. I should have rushed to the hospital, held her hand, told her I forgave her, and that everything would be okay. Instead, I rolled over and went back to sleep. The next morning brought another phone call, this one from Detective Jim Royce. "Eric, I need to ask you some questions about your wife's self-harm attempt." "Ex-wife. I filed for divorce last week." "Right. Can you come down to the station?" "Am I under arrest?" "No, but there are some things we need to discuss." I drove to the police station wondering what Chloe had told them. Had she blamed me for her self-harm attempt? Had she painted me as the vindictive husband who'd driven her to despair? Jim met me in an interview room with coffee and the kind of serious expression that meant business. "How are you holding up?" he asked. "I'm fine." "Your wife tries to eliminate herself and you're fine?" "My ex-wife made her own choices. I'm not responsible for them." Jim studied me for a moment, then opened a folder on the table between us. "Chloe claims you orchestrated an elaborate revenge scheme against her and Derek Keating. She says you planted evidence, manipulated witnesses, and deliberately destroyed their lives. I exposed an affair and financial fraud. That's not revenge. It's justice. Is it? Because from where I'm sitting, it looks like you spent weeks planning and executing a campaign designed to destroy two people's lives. Two people who were cheating and stealing. That doesn't give you the right to play judge and jury. I leaned back in my chair, studying my neighbor's face. Jim was a good cop and a decent man, but he was also bound by rules and procedures that didn't account for the kind of betrayal I'd experienced. "What exactly are you accusing me of?" I asked. "I'm not accusing you of anything. Yet. But Chloe has made some serious allegations, and I need to investigate them." "Such as? Harassment, stalking, conspiracy to commit fraud?" "Conspiracy to commit fraud? I didn't commit fraud, I exposed it. By planting a GPS tracker on Derek's car without his knowledge, by creating fake identification to gather information from the motel, by manipulating witnesses and evidence to support your case." Jim was right, of course. I had done all of those things, and some of them were probably illegal, but I'd been careful to avoid anything that would result in serious criminal charges. "Can you prove any of that?" I asked. "I'm working on it." We stared at each other across the table, two men who'd been neighbors and friends, but were now on opposite sides of a legal investigation. "Jim, let me ask you something. If you found out that your wife was cheating on you and stealing money, what would you do?" "I'd hire a lawyer and let the system handle it." "And if the system moved too slowly? If your wife and her lover had months or years to cover their tracks, destroy evidence, and escape consequences?" "I'd still let the system handle it." "Even if it meant they got away with it?" Jim didn't answer, which was answer enough. I left the police station knowing that my legal troubles were just beginning. Chloe's self-harm attempt had given her a powerful weapon, the sympathy of people who saw her as a victim rather than a perpetrator. She was using that sympathy to rewrite history, painting herself as the wronged party and me as the vindictive monster who'd driven her to despair. But I had weapons of my own. Monday morning, I called Tom Bradley at the newspaper. "I need you to run a follow-up story," I said. "About what?" "About the evidence that Chloe and Derek tried to destroy before they were caught. Financial records, text messages, witness statements, everything they thought they could hide. I already covered most of that in the original story." "Not all of it. There are things you don't know, things that show just how calculated and deliberate their deception was." I spent an hour on the phone with Tom, providing him with additional evidence and documentation that painted Chloe and Derek not as star-crossed lovers, but as cold, calculating criminals who'd stolen money and betrayed trust without a second thought. The follow-up story ran Wednesday, just as Chloe was being released from the hospital. The headline read, "Fraud Suspects Attempted Cover-Up Before Arrest." It detailed their efforts to hide evidence, manipulate witnesses, and escape accountability for their actions. The story included quotes from Maya, who'd finally decided to tell the truth about her role in covering up the affair. It included financial records that showed the systematic nature of their theft. Most damaging of all, it included excerpts from text messages between Chloe and Derek, in which they discussed their plans to frame me for harassment if their affair was ever discovered. "If Eric finds out, we'll just say he's been stalking us," one message read. "Who's going to believe a bitter husband over two successful professionals?" The messages revealed a level of premeditation and manipulation that destroyed any sympathy Chloe might have gained from her self-harm attempt. She wasn't a victim driven to despair. She was a calculating criminal who'd tried to escape responsibility for her actions. By Thursday, public opinion had shifted decisively against both Chloe and Derek. The self-harm attempt was now seen as a desperate ploy for sympathy rather than a genuine cry for help. The harassment allegations against me were dismissed as the lies of a woman who would say anything to avoid accountability. Friday brought the final twist. Jim Royce called to tell me that the investigation into my conduct had been dropped. "Chloe's credibility is shot," he said. The text messages prove that she was planning to make false accusations against you from the beginning. The DA won't prosecute a case based on the testimony of someone who's demonstrated a pattern of deception. What about Derek? Derek's lawyer advised him not to cooperate with any investigation that doesn't directly relate to his criminal charges. Smart move, considering. So that's it? That's it. You're in the clear, Eric. Legally speaking. I thanked Jim and hung up, then sat in my empty house contemplating what I'd accomplished. Derek was facing prison time and financial ruin. Chloe was unemployable and would likely face similar criminal penalties. Their affair was over, their reputations were destroyed, and their futures were bleak. I had won, completely and decisively. So why did I feel so empty? The answer came to me as I sat there in the silence of my living room, surrounded by the remnants of a life I'd shared with someone who'd never really loved me. I'd won the battle, but I'd lost the war. I'd destroyed my enemies, but I'd also destroyed myself in the process. The man who'd started this journey had been naive and trusting, someone who believed in love and marriage and the possibility of building a life with another person. That man was gone, replaced by someone harder and more calculating, someone who could orchestrate the destruction of two people's lives without losing sleep. I'd become everything I'd once despised. But as I sat there contemplating the cost of my victory, I realized something else. I didn't regret it, not any of it. Chloe and Derek had made their choices and I'd made mine. They'd chosen betrayal and deception, and I'd chosen justice and truth. The consequences were theirs to bear, not mine. 6 months later, Derek was sentenced to 3 years in prison for fraud and embezzlement. Chloe received 2 years, suspended to 18 months with probation. Both were ordered to pay full restitution to Rivera Marketing Solutions, a sum that would keep them in debt for years to come. I watched their sentencing from the back of the courtroom, studying their faces as the judge read their fates aloud. Derek looked angry and defiant, still convinced that he was the victim of an elaborate conspiracy. Chloe looked broken, a shadow of the confident woman who'd once laughed at how predictable I was. Neither of them looked at me. After the sentencing, I drove home to my empty house on Maple Street and opened a bottle of bourbon. I raised a toast to the empty room, to the silence that had become my companion, to the victory that had cost me everything I'd thought I wanted. To justice, I said aloud, and drank deeply. Outside, the Maine woods whispered in the wind, keeping their secrets as they always had. But my secrets were all exposed now, laid bare for the world to see. I was Eric Lawson, the man who'd destroyed his cheating wife and her lover, the man who'd chosen revenge over forgiveness, justice over mercy. I was the man who'd won, and I was completely, utterly alone. But as I sat there in my solitude, I realized that alone was exactly where I wanted to be. I'd learned the hard way that people were capable of betrayal, deception, and cruelty beyond imagination. I'd learned that love was fragile and trust was dangerous, and that the only person you could truly rely on was yourself. It was a harsh lesson, but it was an honest one. And after months of lies and deception, honesty was exactly what I needed. I finished my bourbon and went to bed, sleeping peacefully for the first time in almost a year. Tomorrow would bring new challenges, new possibilities, new opportunities to build a life on my own terms. But tonight, I was content to savor my victory and the silence that came with it. Justice had been served, and that was enough.